I'm Esther Gitu-Yuat. It's Thursday, August 3rd. This is Africa 54. Amid demonstrations supporting the military junta and coup in Niger, U.S. President Joe Biden calls for the immediate release of ousted President Mohamed Bazoum. Former U.S. President Donald Trump is due to appear in court Thursday after a grand jury in Washington, D.C. accuses him of illegally trying to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. In a Basketball Without Borders camp held at the American International School of Johannesburg is being hailed as a success. We'll tell you why. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. The French Foreign Ministry says it has completed the evacuation of hundreds of French and European citizens from Niger. Over 1,000 people were evacuated, including nearly 600 French nationals. Amid the evacuation, supporters of Niger's junta demonstrated in Niamey on Thursday to protest sanctions and demand the departure of French troops. Meanwhile, U.S. President Joe Biden is calling for the immediate release of Nigerian President Mohamed Bazoum, who was ousted last week in a military coup. ECOWAS has set a deadline of Sunday for Bazoum's return to power. Otherwise, it will consider the use of force. The West African bloc has also imposed sanctions on Niger that include cutting energy transmissions to the impoverished country of 25 million people, which imports nearly all of its electricity. Military leaders put Bazoum under house arrest on July 26th, naming General Abdurrahman Tiani, the commander of the Presidential Guard, as their new leader. The White House says it is closely watching the coup in Niger as the U.S. Embassy prepares to evacuate staff from the West African nation. Analysts say Moscow and Beijing are also monitoring Niamey and looking for opportunities to widen their influence. VOA's Anita Powell reports from Washington.
This is becoming a sadly familiar image in West Africa. A group of military officers, unhappy over poor security and bad governance, imprison the country's leader, take over the airwaves, and declare themselves in charge. That's what happened in 2021 in Mali, later that year in Guinea, in 2022 in Burkina Faso, and last month in Niger.
Today, 26 July 2023, we, the Forces of Defense and Security, reunited as the National Council for the Safeguarding of the Country, CNSP, have decided to put an end to the regime which you know.
But optics aside, this West African coup is different and has Washington watching hour by hour as it sees whether frantic diplomacy will bring the deposed president, for whom the State Department has expressed unwavering support, back to power. That's because Niger is a key U.S. partner in fighting Islamic extremism in the Sahel, with a critical U.S. drone base and hundreds of U.S. troops in the country. VOA spoke this week with the nation's ambassador to the U.S. about the situation.
Less than 2 weeks ago, we had here a team of our militaries for a meeting with the United States authorities. We went together to the Pentagon. We went together to the State Department. A week later, we're doing bad. What does this mean? It doesn't make any sense at all.
Analysts note that this fragile, resource-rich region is also in the crosshairs of other major powers, with Russian mercenary group Wagner increasing its foothold in neighboring countries.
This is a proxy war, and there's been an ongoing proxy war in Africa for the last 3 to 4 to 5 years at least. It's sort of a new scramble for Africa. But here, the external forces are the United States, Russia, and China. And Russia likes to conquer, if you will, through the Wagner Group. China likes to use economic warfare called Belt Road Initiative.
The State Department said they haven't seen proof that Russian mercenaries were involved, but said they will likely try to capitalize on the instability.
I would not be surprised to see Wagner attempt to exploit this situation to their own advantage, as they've attempted to exploit other situations in Africa to their own advantage. And when I say to their own advantage, I mean to their own personal financial.
Cameroon's separatist conflict, now in its 6th year, has left thousands of people dead, while an estimated 2 million survivors struggle with emotional wounds. A trauma healing center in the country's west region is overwhelmed with requests for help. Anzwaku has this story narrated by Moki Edwin Kinzeka.
Every other week, Aminatu Musa goes to a speech therapy session organized by the Mission 21 Trauma Healing and Resilience Center. She's in her 3rd session and still can't talk without crying. In 2018, Musa and her husband fled the conflict between government forces and separatist militant groups in western Cameroon, heading for Nigeria. But along the way, she says her husband fell ill and died. Musa says that for nearly a year, she has not been able to sleep.
Most of the times when I come to center.
Most of the time when I come to the center, I feel better. When I come to a meeting like this and I go back, I'll sleep a bit. After a while, the sleep will just disappear again.
The healing process begins with therapy in groups of up to 20 people. After that, therapists hold individual sessions with patients. Mission 21, a Swiss non-governmental organization, also organizes home visits. The center offers material assistance, but therapist Esther Mokon says that kind of aid is of limited help.
If you give me a business when I'm hurting, I will not do anything with that business. So when you heal me first and I'm fine and I'm relaxed, I can now be able to do something.
When Vanessa Ngang was 20, the crisis began and her husband was killed by the separatists. She spent 5 years battling illness and unemployment. After 3 months of treatment, she was able to start a new life in a sewing workshop.
So they will fine.
I feel good. I learned a new skill and graduated. They opened my sewing shop. I thank Mission 21 for this initiative to care for people. From time to time, I still have memories of the past, but I am fine.
But I me fine. When I go back, I cry. I come back, I me fine.
Country coordinator Togol Lumumba Mukong says Mission 21 conducts about 120 counseling sessions per month, but demand is 3 times as high. He says the NGO wants to not only add specialists to its office, but also find a suitable solution for each family.
We think that we, as Mission 21, we cannot do anything without others. So we need local NGOs, we need even the willingness of the IDPs to work with us, and then we put our hands together, then we can all come out of this trauma, which is ongoing.
According to the UN, Cameroon's separatist conflict, now in its 6th year, has left thousands of people dead, while an estimated 2 million conflict survivors are seeking help to continue their education or find work. For Anne Zwanke in Bafoussam, Cameroon, Moki Edwin Kinzeka, VOA News.
As the fighting in Sudan rages, the Kordofan area on the border with South Sudan is seeing intense clashes. Thousands of people in the area are fleeing to South Sudan. Henry Wilkins has more from Rank, South Sudan.
Like thousands of others, Mohamed Hamdan Mohamed has just arrived in South Sudan from El Abid in North Kordofan. He says that since Sudan's war started in mid-April, fighting between the Sudanese military and paramilitary rapid support forces, the RSF, has intensified.
I came here because I fear for my safety, for my life. My friends have been killed there. I have seen it with my own eyes. Both the government and the rapid support forces are fighting. Many people are running away, but others are injured and killed. Many.
Video taken from social media purports to show people taking cover from crossfire in Kordofan. The fighting in Kordofan is partly what triggered the mass displacement seen here. The Sudanese Armed Forces, the SAF, have accused rebels from the Sudan People's Liberation Movement North, or SPLMN, of breaking a ceasefire and attacking their troops throughout June and July. The SPLMN is a group of ethnically Nuba people active in Kordofan since the 1980s. According to experts, the SPLMN has long-standing grievances with the mostly ethnically Arab Sudanese government and is taking advantage of the breakdown of law and order caused by the war in Sudan. The rebel group's stated aim is to secure more political representation for the Nuba people.
There have long been ethnic tensions between Khartoum, center of government, and the people of the Nuba Mountains, who have long been marginalized. We're really at a tipping point where we may see South Kordofan being dragged into the war.
The fighting between the SAF and SPLMN only accounts for one aspect of the fighting in Kordofan, however. Data from the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project, a non-profit that remotely monitors global conflict, shows there have been 485 fatalities in Kordofan due to conflict since Sudan's war started in April. In the same period before the conflict, there were just 30, an increase of more than 15 times. The data also reveals that approximately 80% of the fatalities can be linked to clashes between the paramilitary RSF and the SAF, which this video from social media purports to show. Asked what the RSF is trying to achieve in Kordofan, one expert said, "It's not clear."
That's a good question. Political ambitions in Darfur are clear. This is where land has been promised to RSF recruits from other places in West Africa, Niger, Mali. It may be that some of this land has already been promised to RSF fighters, as it's been promised to them in Darfur.
But what is clear is that average citizens are being forced to flee the area in the thousands. In July, the United Nations said around 8,000 people have been displaced internally in Kordofan. There is no data on how many have fled to South Sudan. Jamisco Fela has just arrived in South Sudan from Kordofan.
I witnessed 16 people from South Sudan's Dinka tribe being killed. They were killed in the crossfire by government forces.
Henry Wilkins for VOA News, Renk, South Sudan.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump is due to appear in court Thursday after a grand jury in Washington, D.C. accused him of illegally trying to overturn the result of the 2020 presidential election. VOA's congressional correspondent Catherine Gibson has more from Washington.
A third indictment for former President Donald Trump, this time in Washington, for illegally trying to overturn his 2020 election defeat. Efforts that prosecutors say inspired many of his supporters to attack the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021.
The attack on our nation's Capitol on January 6, 2021 was an unprecedented assault on the seat of American democracy. As described in the indictment, it was fueled by lies. Lies by the defendant.
Trump will be arraigned in court Thursday in Washington, where a grand jury of American citizens indicted the former president as part of a Justice Department investigation. The 4-count indictment accuses Trump of conspiracy to violate Americans' right to vote, conspiracy to defraud the government, obstructing an official proceeding, and conspiring to obstruct an official proceeding.
Mr. Smith and his team of experienced, principled career agents and prosecutors have followed the facts and the law wherever they lead.
Trump, currently the frontrunner for the 2024 Republican presidential nomination, released a statement from his campaign describing the charges as persecutions of President Trump, reminiscent of Nazi Germany and the former Soviet Union.
What they did here is an abomination that will live in history as one of the worst violations of free speech ever.
But one analyst said the charges are related to Trump's actions, encouraging his followers to storm the U.S. Capitol.
We have a First Amendment right to be protected in our speech, and particularly political speech is afforded the highest degree of protection. But the indictment shows that Trump was not just lying about election fraud, but he used those lies in order to try to subvert the will of the people and to actually overturn the results of a lawful election.
Lawmakers who served on the January 6th committee investigating Trump's involvement said a fair trial will demonstrate the United States' commitment to the rule of law. And some American voters say the charges are overdue.
I think it's an embarrassment for the country. I mean, that's the former president. He was just indicted on election fraud. It's pretty embarrassing, isn't it?
Trump accused prosecutors of timing the charges to distract attention from the ongoing legal troubles of Hunter Biden, the son of his anticipated 2024 election rival, President Joe Biden. Meanwhile, Trump has also been indicted on unrelated charges in New York and Florida, involving the mishandling of classified documents and campaign fraud, and could face even more charges in Georgia in relation to 2020 election fraud. Catherine Gibson, VOA News, Washington.
Law enforcement officials have beefed up security outside the federal courthouse here in Washington, where Donald Trump is set to face charges. He tried to reverse his 2020 presidential election defeat. And for more on Trump's appearance in court Thursday, let's go to VOA's Ignatius Ano, who is standing by live. Hello, Ignatius.
Hi, Esther.
So what is expected at today's arraignment?
So at exactly 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is a few hours from now, the former President Donald Trump will be at the Barrett Federal Court to answer questions regarding the indictment, the 45-page indictment that was issued by the special counsel, Jack Smith, yesterday, as to whether he tried to subvert results of the 2020 elections that essentially said that he had lost the election. So here's what is expected. Trump will have the opportunity to do two things, either to plead guilty or not plead guilty. If he decides to plead guilty, it means that the case will go to sentencing. But if he decides not to plead guilty, it will take several months for trial to begin. What VOA has heard that the former president is very likely to plead not guilty, as he is expected to be arraigned before the court that you can see behind me in a few hours from now. And as you can see, there have been pro and anti-Trump protesters early on today who have been saying essentially that what is happening is a witch hunt against the former president, again, because he said that he wants to run in the 2024 elections. And also protesters were saying that he indeed tried to harm the United States democracy and should be brought before the law.
Now, Ignatius, what's the reaction from Trump's camp about his arraignment today? You mentioned it's the third. What are they saying?
So it's been somber silence, I should say, particularly from Republican senators. You do recall that in January, when the House was trying to impeach him, many of the senators were against that move to impeach the former president. But they're saying that this indictment in particular is the most consequential. It's the third after two other indictments, the one in Manhattan over the hush money and the one in Florida pertaining to his handling of classified documents when he left office. For them, especially regarding the January 6th, 2021 attack, it was something that the people saw happen live on television. So it's one, controversial and also consequential. So it's been a somber silence on one hand, and for the camp itself, they're saying that it's part of a political witch hunt. But a former Vice President, Mike Pence, who served under President Donald Trump, has said that he will be guilty until he's proven guilty, and that anyone who puts himself above the Constitution of the United States does not deserve to be president of the country, Esther.
And Ignatius, a lot of people are wondering how his arraignment would impact his re-election bid in the 2024 presidential election. What are you hearing?
Esther, that's the big question. And even as both camps, i.e. those who are supporting President Trump and those who are against what's happening, have been saying that this is mainly because perhaps what they're trying to do is to stop him from running in 2024 before. But analysts are saying that it has actually no impact on, his desire or resolve to be the leader of the Republican Party. But then again, there have been other candidates that have come up to lead the ticket of the Republican Party. It has not, as we speak now, been the official candidate that has been endorsed by the party. The Republicans Party have to go to primaries to decide who will be the leader. So it remains to be seen, especially depending on what, President Donald Trump will be answering in the next few hours from now.
Ignatius, thank you very much for your reporting.
Thank you, Esther.
This week, VOA's English to Africa service has hit a major milestone. We are celebrating our 60th anniversary, and two African-based correspondents, Timothy Obiezu and Lamek Masina, are sharing their thoughts on the achievement.
I'm so excited to congratulate VOA's English to Africa service for 6 decades of quality coverage of the African continent. In these years, VOA has reached millions of listeners and viewers in Africa, and it's been a privilege to be able to contribute and work with some of the best people in journalism. Congratulations to the team. Happy 60th anniversary.
To the Voice of America English to Africa service, I say happy 60th anniversary. Continue with your excellent news delivery well into the future. Cheers.
Hello everyone, I'm Lamek Masina, a stringer for Voice of America based in Blantyre here in Malawi. I am wishing the English to Africa service on its commemoration of 60th anniversary. Wishing you all guys there the great success in the years to come.
Thank you for your compliments, our reporters there in Africa. Speaking about the 60th anniversary of English to Africa. Still to come, a Basketball Without Borders camp in South Africa is being hailed as a success. We'll explain.
From the vast savannas to the lush rainforests of the continent, experience the soothing touch of shea butter, the revitalizing properties of baobab oil, and the nourishment of African black soap. On this week's episode of Our Voices, we'll be showcasing how these age-old skincare treasures have stood the test of time, promoting healthy, radiant skin while embracing the beauty of diversity. So don't miss this captivating glimpse into Africa's skincare wisdom. Join the conversation each week right here on Our Voices.
In times of change, when the world seems uncertain, and what we hear doesn't reflect what we see, we seek the truth. When we are told only part of the story, we lose trust. In moments of crisis, our dreams, hopes, and wishes for a better tomorrow depends on a free press. At Voice of America, we bring you the stories that people take risks to see. We connect the world and unite it with truth. At Voice of America, we show you the whole picture.
In other news, Amnesty International is accusing Sudan's warring factions of committing extensive war crimes in the ongoing conflict, including deliberate killings of civilians and sexual assault. In a 56-page report released Thursday, Amnesty says some of the assault victims were held in conditions amounting to sexual slavery, according to the Associated Press. Labor unions marched across Nigeria on Wednesday to protest the soaring cost of living under President Bola Tinubu. They called for the government to improve social welfare interventions to reduce hardship. The unions say Tinubu's suspension of subsidies has doubled the prices of gas, causing a spike in prices for food and most other commodities. And NATO allies located along the alliance's eastern front are growing increasingly worried about the presence of Russia-linked Wagner Group mercenaries in Belarus. An incident this week has added to the concerns, with 2 Belarusian helicopters flying briefly into Polish airspace at a low altitude while carrying out exercises. The recent Basketball Without Borders camp held at the American International School of Johannesburg is being called a success. Tuso Kumalo tells us more.
This year's Basketball Without Borders BWB camp brought together 8 youths from 25 different African countries. It also brought in dozens of current and former National Basketball Association stars as well as coaches. There was visible excitement from the youngsters as they got to brush shoulders with the best in the game. And the organizers expressed great excitement at the milestone achieved by BWB so far.
But we wanted to make sure that our young people across Africa just have the opportunity to participate in the sport. And we see really now the massive presence of players from the NBA, from Africa in the NBA.
The most exciting times for the youngsters was on the basketball court, where they got coached by the best coaches in the game. Stars and former stars of the game were also there to give them tips. The NBA stars and coaches visited one of South Africa's oldest and impoverished township of Alexandra in Johannesburg. Here, 4 basketball courts upgraded by the BWB were officially handed over to the community. About 200 youngsters from the township got a chance to be trained by the stars in the new courts.
With the basketball ecosystem, including the basketball federations, the cities, the corporates, to grow the game across the continent so that every African youth can fulfill their potential in the game.
A colorful closing ceremony capped the 4-day camp, with some of the youngsters returning to their countries with trophies.
These players and coaches are one of the best in the world, and they've been through so much and experienced so much. So just to get the opportunity to talk to them.
They say their vision is to one day return to this venue no longer as trainee youngsters, but as basketball stars proudly produced by Basketball Without Borders. Tuso Kumalo for VOA News, Johannesburg, South Africa.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.